So for our final project, we're going to be doing a festival poster. And I'll show some examples of that in just one moment. But you'll see, just like the past projects during this time, we've done sort of multi-step. And we're going to be watching the final part of the video, Advertising at the Edge of the Apocalypse. So after you watch that final video, you're going to go to the discussion board and write a response not only about this clip, but just kind of summing up your whole experience with having to watch that for this class. And in at least 5 sentences, you're going to answer these questions. What is your biggest takeaway? How does it apply to your own life? How does it affect how you think about being a graphic designer and moving forward with that as a practice? And what does all of this mean within the context of these current events with the virus and how that's affecting all these different areas of life, like health and job, economy, community, so on and so forth. And next, you're going to start to reflect back on all the concepts we've learned over the semester. So review your notes. We talked about a lot of things. We talked about in the principles and elements, we went into balance, we went into color, we went into shape, contrast, etc. And review typography, grids, and hierarchy, and some thoughts on that. Because for this final project, it's kind of a culmination of all of those concepts that we've been learning. And you're going to be applying them by designing a poster for a festival from scratch. So this festival can be real, it can be something upcoming in the future, it can be something that happened in the past, or it can be completely imaginary. You want to make sure that regardless, you include the title, where it's going to be, and when it's going to be. And again, with all that information, goes back to the last project. How do we design it so the viewer sees the most important thing first? You also need to use at least 2 high-resolution images. So this is so important. I'm going to go into how exactly to make sure you do high resolution. So here at Google Images, and you'll likely want a background image. You might do a solid colored background, or you might want the whole image to be a background. You're going to use at least 2 images. So let's say I wanted a sky background or sunset, that could be good. Okay, so whatever I search for, I want to make sure I go to my tools and change the size to large. And you can see that that refreshes everything and gives me new options for things. The second thing you want to absolutely make sure that you do is once you find one that you like, you don't want to save the thumbnail. I don't want to drag this thumbnail onto my desktop or else it will still be small. It will be the size of the thumbnail. I want to wait for it to enlarge, and you can see over here that's quite big, and I would take that one and drag it over to the desktop. Make sure that went. There we go. Okay. So nextly, see what happens if I type skull. Okay, and so maybe if I do a skull, it'll be a smaller part, so I don't need it to be huge, I don't need it to be the size of the background, but I still want to make sure it's high resolution. So could do large to start, and if I don't find anything good, could go to medium. But I'll just do this one, this badger skull. Okay, So next, let's go to the discussion board and look at all these student examples. All of them are made by Introduction to Graphic Design students. A lot of them had never used Photoshop before the class. And I think you'll really surprise yourself if you give yourself enough time and really experiment and also use YouTube as a resource that you can make some really amazing stuff that can stick with you and be used as a portfolio piece for the rest of the course. A lot of the stuff we do in introduction classes, it's very much like a learning exercise, so they don't usually become portfolio pieces, but this is a really good chance to get that out of this class. Before I jump over, I also want to point out that the demo and explanation, where is it? Oh wait, here we go. The demo for Project 8 is going to be a really good resource for you as well. So when we did that getting better acquainted with Photoshop and we used the sky and the meditating person and the blending tools, opacity, layers, all of those more like intermediate tools are going to be really good to build off of your introductory tools that we've been working with. Okay, so looking at all of these examples, I think it's really helpful for y'all to start to ask yourselves how exactly they put these together. And start to think of it in terms of layers, right? So different pieces of this puzzle sort of layered on top of each other. So, for example, we'll do Space Fest. And you can look at all the different parts, right? You've got one drawing here, you've got one drawing here, and you've got one image here. So those are 3 images that they pulled into Photoshop. This background is just a navy rectangle. They put text on top of that navy rectangle. They put a line tool on top of that navy rectangle. I think also there's another image in here, and she used the magic wand tool like I went over in the Project 8 demo to delete that and put that image in there. And so in her layers panel, she's just ordering it. So this one's on top, this rectangle's beneath it, but it's probably on top of this. So this is pretty impressive, but looks really simple, right? And then some of these are using special effects. So you'll see when we go back to the project description that that's also part of this project, is going to YouTube and looking up a special effect that you can use. So for this, it was paint splatter. There's so many tutorials on YouTube for anything and everything you'd want to do. And again, just notice that these are just layers on themselves, right? So she used the paintbrush tool. Could use that as well. This person scanned in a drawing that they did. You can do that. I would be more than happy to help you with that. This person applied a texture as their tutorial and a drop shadow as well. So lots and lots and lots that can be done. This person just had different textures and different backgrounds and cut into it using probably the pen tool, if I had to guess. Okay, so jumping back to the assignment, here's all the parameters for it. So you want to make sure it's 11 by 17, which is a pretty standard poster size for an event. You can also do it long ways, right? Like hot hamburger, hot dog. And you want to make sure the resolution's 150. we went over how to source the images from the web. You can draw them yourself. I'm going to be doing a tutorial for my other class for that, and so if you're interested in that, let me know and I can provide you with that tutorial. Make sure you're scaling them properly. That's extremely important. And then you're going to submit your final file here and save your JPEG, max resolution, put in the discussion board, and also post a link to whatever special effects video that you used. So I'll jump into Photoshop really quickly and I'll create my new to 11 by 17, 150 resolution. You can go higher if you want, but I wouldn't go too high because your file size might get really big and slow things down, slow down your computer. Make sure it's in inches. I know that this is an issue that some of you have still been having. For whatever reason, the default is not inches on your computer, and so things have been tiny, but just make sure it's 11 by 17. And create. Minimize that. Okay. So I'm going to start dragging my images in. And within the new 2020, if I want to resize it, it's already locked into like scale. So I actually don't have to hold down shift in this program. Okay, so maybe I just want sort of like a gradient effect. Okay, and then drag in my skull. Unknown JPEG file, interesting. No one's. Okay, sorry about that. Now we're just going to use this skull. And once I'm happy with the placement, I can always move it, obviously. I'm going to hit the check mark. And I can go to my Magic Wand tool. And it won't let me delete the background because of that phenomenon I talked about of it not being rasterized. You can see in the corner, if I want to isolate anything, I'm going to have to right click on it and rasterize layer. And now I can delete. And this is definitely just a recap of what I went over in Project 8 and that demo. So watch that again fully, and this is just kind of a recap of it. But to deselect this, I'm going to do Command D, and I can go to my Move tool. I can copy and paste this with my layer selected. I'll do Command C, Command V. And I'll pick out a cool font. I'll pick out, maybe I want some like drop shadows on this or a glow effect on this or texturizing these things, texturizing my text. If you don't know what kind of effect you want, you can just go to YouTube and type in special effects Photoshop and just see what comes up and see what could work for yours. So I look forward to seeing what everyone comes up with and also what everyone has been thinking about the movie. I really enjoyed y'all's comments for part 3. I thought it was really interesting how some people sort of thought that society is sort of doomed in a way to be just about the individual and like this is the way it is now and there's kind of no going back and it shouldn't be this way, but that's just the way it is. And then some of you saying, you know, society is about more than the individual, it's about helping. That's not really where we're at right now, but sort of like an optimism versus like a nihilism approach, which I think all answers are valid, but it was really interesting to see that. So thank you for those of you who were really thoughtful about that.